Hey everyone, it's Joe Waxman. Once again, I'm back with another video. This time I want to do another what is Gen X transit video about Uranus and Scorpio. This is one of my favorite positions. Probably because I have it on the ascendant. I have the Scorpio ascendant, Uranus on the ascendant. So it is very much part of my own astrological identity, I guess you could say. Um, so, what is Uranus? Uranus is a planet of rebellion and independence. It is often called the Great Awakener. I liken it to a bolt of lightning because it's just so explosive and sudden and electric, and it's just out of the box. Uranus is a planet that really doesn't take anything into consideration but its own inspiration in the moment. Therefore, it's completely independent and it's not going to follow anything. Uranus really doesn't do like social conditioning, like, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to do it, like that sort of thing. And therefore, it's not going to be, one of the crowd. Uranus needs to stand out. It needs to be on its own. It needs to be independent. And it can't follow anyone else. And people sometimes, I've heard questions like, what's so great about, doing your own thing and just being independent and not following anyone? Well, it's not like it's so great or anything. It's just that's what Uranus is. And that's the way Uranus needs to be. Right. And therefore, it's not going to be religious anyway, or at least not orthodox. It's going to be, if it is religious, well, it's going to have its own religion, basically, because it's not going to follow anyone else's rules. It's not going to follow any book. It's not going to follow any priest or rabbi or, teacher or philosopher, anything like that. It's just not going to follow. It's not going to do what you tell it to. It's not going to do what it's supposed to do. It's going to be completely unique, independent, and doing its own thing and just be like, what do I think? And it, mythologically, it is one of the Uranus, like Greek mythology. I think it was Uranus and Gaia are the two original gods. So it's, energetically, it has this very old original quality that's just above and beyond everyone else. Saturn is his child, and Saturn, I think, I'm so rusty on the mythology. I think Saturn castrates it, so it makes it neuter. So it has this quality of being gender neutral, Uranus, and that that is interesting. Like, it's kind of like Mercury in that sense, and it is very intellectual. People often say it's like the higher octave of Mercury. I can understand that kind of thinking, but one of the things you have to understand is that Uranus is its own planet. It's not a higher octave of Mercury. That kind of makes it seem like it's derivative. And Mercury is its own planet, not derivative of Uranus. They're both independent planets. They have similar qualities in a sense, both very intellectual. Mercury rules the intellect. Uranus rules really brilliant, original, independent thinking. Right, it's the co-ruler of Aquarius, along with Saturn as the other ruler of Aquarius. So Uranus brings like inventive thinking, scientific invention, just out of the box, independence, rebellion. And the other thing that Uranus has going for it is that it has an incredible confidence, because on the one side you have Aquarius, on the other side you have Leo is polar opposite. So like, what some of the qualities, sorry, somebody's texting me. Some of the qualities of Leo are mirrored in Aquarius, and that, like, Aquarius is often said to have like a god complex. Well, why? Well, we can see with Leo. Leo's like this royalty, right? The ego, the sun, the king. But what is up with Aquarius having God complex? Well, that comes from Uranus, because Uranus is the original God along with Gaia. And Gaia doesn't even have its own astrology. Gaia is the earth. I mean, that you could say the ascendant could be symbolic of Gaia, but Uranus is the fatherly God, the original God father. It's like the grandfather of the all the planets. And Uranus has this kind of confidence that's above and beyond everything. And I tried to explain this in another video, where the Uranian mind is that it really just doesn't consider what anyone says. It's like, oh, the whole world says this. That doesn't apply to me. I'm above and beyond that. Like literally, Uranus is just like, okay, you guys all think that. Go for it. You guys are like beneath me. I'm above and beyond all of that. Like literally, I'm beyond Saturn. You know, I'm a transpersonal planet. Neptune's not as nearly as intellectual, and Pluto is, but in a different way. But Uranus is just like, your rules don't apply to me. Like they just don't. They're just not. I'm just not interested in what you guys are doing. You guys are all like playing your little games on the earth, and I'm above and beyond that. I'm working in like the God level. And so that's where this God complex comes from. And that's where Uranus really is unique. It has this, it's not egotistical in the way the sun is egotistical. It's just like, I don't even need to explain that I'm above and beyond all you guys' like earthly games and thoughts and conditions, and it's like that. It's just above and beyond. And so there is this godly feeling, this godly confidence that comes with Uranus. Wherever it is in your chart, it's just like above and beyond and independent of. Like you guys all think that? Good for you. That doesn't apply to me. Not arrogance, it just doesn't apply to me. It's like humoring kids. You're like, kids have all these, like a bunch of kids are fighting and like arguing and stuff, and you're just standing up over them as an adult, and you're just like, okay, like have fun, kids. I'm not doing what you're doing. But Uranus thinks everyone in the whole world is a kid to them. Like that's literally Uranus's mindset. But that's important to understand. And I'm going off of, this is not the short version of what is Uranus. I mean, I really, it's really important to understand what these planets are in a deeper way. And then we have Scorpio, which I just did a Pluto and Libra video, and a lot of that applies. And you guys know what Scorpio. I did a whole video on Scorpio. Scorpio, it's like the eighth sign, rules death and sex, and people include taxes in there. Okay, I mean, I don't know, but death and rebirth and Pluto and psychology and crisis and passion and desires and vengeance and gosh, what else? I mean, Scorpio is a fighter, but it's a much more psychological fighter than Aries, right? It's not going, if you're wrong in Aries, and Aries will just like rage and want to punch you in the face like right away without even thinking about it. Scorpio will seethe inside and plot their attack, or even if they don't, maybe they won't attack. Maybe they'll just be like, well, karma is going to get you. But if you push a Scorpio enough, they will get their revenge. They'll plot their revenge one way or another, right? So Scorpio has that very vengeful quality. It's also very intellectual, right? Because again, Pluto influence, the outer planets. So like the two outer planets that are more intellectual are Uranus and Pluto. Neptune is more of that imaginative and creative, and it comes in handy for the intellect enabled to be because of imagination. Like imagination is really important when you're trying to be creative thinking, right? But the intellect is really enhanced with Uranus and Pluto in different ways. Pluto is psychological, and deeply penetrating, and Uranus is like inventive and just out of the box, like completely now, bolts of lightning, brilliance, awakening. The planet, the great awakener, the bolt of it's the Satori moment, the nirvana, the brilliant flash of lightning in your mind. I got it. That's Uranus, right? Oh, and so actually Uranus and Pluto are a really incredible duo together because they have that in common. And we saw that in the 60s in Virgo when they're conjunct. Incredibly powerful, incredibly penetrating, really brings massive change to society because these transpersonal planets affect society the most, more than any other planets. The three, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? So when Uranus and Pluto came together, created massive change in the society in the 60s. But now, and then when Uranus moves into Scorpio, 1974, again, something similar is happening because Uranus is again meeting Pluto, but not as the planet, but the sign that Pluto rules in Scorpio, right? So again, a Uranus Plutonic kind of conjunction, again, similar way. So they also say Uranus is exalted in Scorpio. So that's really interesting, right? Uranus does really well. It's really like the Uranus and Pluto conjunction in Virgo in the 60s, and then Uranus in Scorpio in 1974. And then we're going to have another iteration of that, a reversal, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus' sign. That's coming up in 2023. So we're almost there. That's going to be really unique. And we're going to have this triplicity. We can hearken, this energy back to the second half of the 70s. And then, that one would trace back to the 60s. So, and what they bring about it is like social upheaval in a strong way, in a quite aggressive way, right? So we should see a resurgence of that, with Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is really going to bring massive amounts of power and change to the people, because Aquarius is the people, society as a whole, for better or worse. But anyway, Uranus in Scorpio brought very radical change to society in social institutions, right? One of the most obvious, and I know this is what I keep referring back to, is in the punk movement, right? And how do we know Uranus was exalted in Scorpio? Maybe it's exalted in Libra or Sagittarius, or who knows? Why do people say that? Well, one thing is really interesting. I just want to bring up some images, and I'm going to share my screen. This is really important to understand the nature of Uranus by looking at its position and its qualities, characteristics in the solar system. This is obviously not to scale, but here's the sun, here's the king, here's Mercury, here's Venus, here's Earth, here's Mars, here's the asteroid belt, which was supposedly a planet that blew up. Now here's Jupiter. And so these are all, Jupiter's very big, obviously, and these are all small normal planets. I mean, Earth's pretty small when compared to the sun or even Jupiter. And here's Saturn, and Saturn has these very, very noticeable rings around it. And these are all like quite normal planets. Then you get to Uranus, and Uranus has a very noticeable ring too, but it's vertical. Not as the rings are not as noticeable as or as thick as Saturn's, but Uranus has the vertical rings, and that's really unique, right? Because we get to Neptune again, and Neptune apparently has some rings too, but they're thin and they're normal again, right? So when we can draw the characteristics of the planet's influence by, partially their hardware, which is what I call their hardware, which are the hardware is their actual physical characteristics, right? Like Mercury's very fast, moving around the sun, fast and agile, and then Venus also. Venus is very close to the Earth, and so is Mars. These are all very personal planets. Then we get to the Jupiter and Saturn. These are less personal. They're more these are like parental planets. The lawmaker and the law enforcer, I like to say. So these are like the upper ceilings, the authorities, the teachers, Jupiter and Saturn. Then we get beyond the law, which was Uranus, and that has to do with what I was talking about. Uranus is past Saturn. Saturn's the law. Uranus is beyond the law. Uranus is beyond whatever law, religious law, political law, social law, all the laws. Uranus is just beyond it, right? And it's just not playing by your rules. It's got its rings vertical compared to its rotation, right? Where all the other planets have it horizontal or nearly horizontal. It's also very big. Neptune is, Uranus is much bigger than the Earth. Not as big as Jupiter or Saturn, but by this comparison, it seems like a little bigger than Neptune. But we get a lot out of this. Just its position in the solar system, its vertical rings, and how far away it is. Like that's what I said, position. Like, and coming right after Saturn, right? And then, not to obsess about punk rock, but I haven't really heard this correlation except for myself. I made this correlation. Punk rock came right after Uranus moved into Scorpio, right? And so we see this. I mean, this is so unusual for our hairstyle. We didn't see this before then, right? This was one of the really unique things, and this is so Uranian. I think Uranus rules the hair, by the way, in general. But Uranus moves into Scorpio. All of a sudden, we're seeing like this kind of style, right? This is very Uranus in Scorpio, right? We get the vertical rings, and then we get the vertical hair. And then Uranus is that out of the box thinking, the out of the box rebellion that doesn't reference anything but itself. Really fascinating, if you ask me. Some of these don't apply. But yeah, I mean, the punk image is really very much symbolic of or representative of Uranus in Scorpio. All right, so this is the chart for Uranus in Scorpio. I had to add this part of the video because it got messed up, so that's why it's cut and pasted here. All right. As you can see, I put Uranus right on the ascendant, 1974, November 21st. So this is a pretty interesting chart overall, I think. It's very strong. And I like to imagine that, the first ingress of Uranus into Scorpio is going to imprint the whole transit of Uranus and Scorpio. I don't know for a fact how much it has to do with it, but I think it does. It's a pretty good chart anyway. I mean, Mars is in Scorpio, conjunct the Sun. Mercury is in Scorpio. Uranus is in Scorpio. It's pretty strong. A lot of planets in Scorpio. Jupiter is in its own sign of Pisces. And North Node is conjunct Neptune in Sagittarius. So I mean, this is a pretty wild time. You have all these Scorpio planets, but then the North Node is conjunct Neptune in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is pretty wild and free, right? Neptune is very expansive. So there's a lot of partying, a lot of having fun. Venus is in Sagittarius, Jupiter is in Pisces, so just like expansion, kind of variations on a similar theme there. Jupiter is square Neptune, so they're making a tense square connection. Moon's in Aquarius, which is, again, repeating a similar Uranus flavor to it. Uranus being the co-ruler of Aquarius. Cancer is debilitated, or Saturn's a debilitated, well, in detriment, not debilitated, in detriment in Cancer. So authority, the rules, leadership, things like that are not in good dignity, which is very much, again, if we're looking at the late 70s and kind of themes of punk rock, which seem to embody a lot of what Scorpio and Pluto and Scorpio, Uranus and Scorpio is all about, then that fits the picture too. Detriment, Saturn in detriment in Cancer. Because Saturn would represent responsibility, maturity, authority, leadership, hard work, and that whole kind of era just threw that to the wind. It was about partying, it was about rebellion, it was about really, social justice, but in a very, I mean, I don't want to say immature way, but like certainly not a Saturnian way. Right. Astrology is very prominent, like I said, with Uranus in Scorpio. So, if you have Uranus in Scorpio in your chart, like I do, then Scorpio themes will become very Uranian. And what does that look like? Well, Scorpio really digs deep, and Uranus is very expansive. So together you have like deep and expansive at the same time. The ideas that come from Uranus are very scorpionic, like big and deep. Like I get ideas all the time, but that's because Uranus is on my ascendant. Like, but there are ideas about very like scorpionic things, esoteric things, astrology related, psychology, understanding psychology. So it's like Uranus is bringing that deep awareness, that awake awareness. Uranus is the great awakener, so Uranus is very awake to all the things that the Scorpio represents, and so it's going to create a lot of really good insights into things like psychology and occult matters, sex and death and crisis, intimacy. It's a brilliant combination that gives incredible insight, and also it's very intuitive. Uranus, especially because Scorpio is a water sign, Uranus is really like that electric element. So it's going to create a powerful intuition as well. And it depends what house it's in. Like if this was in your 12th house, it could really actually indicate some psychic phenomenon, or 8th house or 4th house even, right? Or, depending on the aspects that it has, to the moon or to Mercury, how much water is involved. Well, the more water, good aspects, water would be trine, obviously, trines to Scorpio or to Uranus, or conjunctions, then it will bring more potential psychic influence, because you have the water planets, the water houses, water signs, and then again, it obviously depends on where it is in your chart, but yeah, either a lot of psychic intuition or just brilliant awareness, is what I'm trying to say here. And if Mercury is involved, then it can create really, really powerful intellect. Conjunction with Mercury would just be brilliant, right? Or an opposition or a trine. Even a sextile would be quite good. Yeah. If there's like any relationship to Saturn, it's going to create a lot of rebellion, because Saturn is that confining authority law that Uranus is outside of. Saturn still wants to try and control it, right? The law thinks it's, everyone comes underneath the law. Like you're not going to mess around with the policemen. Policemen think that they're going to have the final say over everyone, but Uranus is outside the law, basically. I mean, energetically. I'm not recommending breaking the law, but there's rebellion there. In other words, if you have like any contacts with Saturn, especially, squares, or, a conjunction, a square, opposition, that would all create difficult tension. If it's conjunct your ascendant, or the sun, that's going to create so much independence, and really unique out of the box thinking. If it's conjunct your moon, I mean, very powerful, unique, independent again, but also depending on, then it's Scorpio, right? Scorpio, Uranus, and moon. That's potentially very psychic, but could also be mental illness, depending again what house it's in, how it's aspected by the planets. I mean, that's very potentially unstable. But again, psychic, if it potentially psychic, potentially very psychic. If it's conjunct Mars, or has a difficult aspect with Mars, that's like explosive violence. I mean, right now it's conjunct Mars in Taurus with North Node. That's very explosive. If it's conjunct Mars and Scorpio, it's very powerful, right? So, because it's in domicile. But with Uranus there, that's really interesting, really dynamic, explosive, but also like for technical like gadgetry, like it could be like great for like really like being like some kind of engineer or some kind of mechanical, like technology, like getting into technology, computers, things like that. Because yeah, after all, Uranus, the other thing, I don't think I even mentioned this, Uranus represents technology, right? The internet. And so that's all going to play into it as well. Incidentally, Uranus having a relationship to electricity, if it's touching a prominent point in your chart, like the ascendant, like the sun or the moon, maybe not the moon so much, but the ascendant or sun, you might have difficulty with electronics, like because it's conjunct my ascendant in Scorpio. Everything breaks around me. Everything, like literally, like I'm not kidding. Like my computer is, I have a fairly new MacBook Pro. It's already on the fritz. It's 2019. I mean, all my electronics break. It's always happened to me. Like I'm just an electronic klutz. Like my energy just destroys electronics. And that's what Uranus will do. And I've heard that other people say that as well. Um, so yeah, guys, I can't really think of anything else to say about Uranus. Um, so I hope you enjoyed this. And um, if you found this interesting, if you want to book a reading, go to my website, macroastrology.com, or email me at macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. It's just like it sounds, macro gold machine, big gold machine at yahoo.com. All right, guys, that's it. I will see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.